Na této cestě jsme se snažili o komplexní přístup, abychom se tomu věnovali společně se společností, tedy nás zajímá dopad na společnost, regulační perspektiva a tak dále. Abych se vrátila k vašemu dotazu. Proto jsme přišli s ekosystémem důvěry a ekosystém excelence. To jsou dvě věci, se kterými jsme přišli a je třeba zajistit, aby Evropa hrála vůdčí roli v umělé inteligenci. Aby průmysl a uživatelé v Evropské unii přijali tyto technologie. My totiž chceme budovat důvěru v technologie, které chceme v Evropě vidět. V kontextu ekosystému důvěry vyvíjíme akt umělé inteligence, abychom správně uživatele chránili. Musíme jim poskytnout ujištění, že mohou technologiím věřit. Čím větší riziko, a na rizicích tento přístup stojí, tím větší požadavky budou kladeny na systémy umělé inteligence. Když přemýšlíme o bezpečnosti a zabezpečení, pak požadavek bude zaručit určitou kvalitu dat, sledovatelnost dat, robustnost, transparentnost, přesnost a samozřejmě bezpečnost a zabezpečení a kybernetickou bezpečnost systému umělé inteligence z hlediska regulátora. Ale my budujeme ten ekosystém excelence, kde podporujeme tento přístup, protože potřebujete také technické nástroje, které by vyhovovaly těmto požadavkům. Jsou platné pro vysoké riziko a vývojáři a uživatelé by měli stejně rozumět stejným věcem a měli by mít určitou úroveň záruky, že tyto požadavky budou splněny a že minimální požadavky důvěryhodné umělé inteligence budou splněny. Proto podporujeme výzkum a vývoj, aby se věnoval těmto specifickým otázkám. Tedy co děláme? Že systém je transparentní, bez předsudků, robustní a může být velice přesný, že je tam ta reprodukovatelnost. Jsou to témata výzkumu, na která se zaměřujeme v naší výzvě k předkládání návrhů. Máme různé nástroje za tímto účelem, k ním se můžeme za chviličku vrátit. Tolik k výzkumu. My se věnujeme výzkumu a vývoji v horizontu Evropa a v našem generálním ředitelství děláme ještě další krok. Máme tam takovou slabinu v našem programu. Máme hezký výzkum a vývoj, ale chybí návaznost na inovace a přesah na trh. Takže proto máme program Digitální Evropa, abychom využili výzkum, který v Evropě existuje a uplatnili ho na trhu. Proto máme nástroje k dispozici, ze kterých bych zmínila zařízení na testování a experimentování pro inovátory v Evropě, aby si otestovali technologie v reálném nebo téměř reálném prostředí, aby pak to mohli upscalovat a vyzkoušet dimenze tak, aby se přesvědčili, že splňují požadavky uživatele, minimální požadavky na bezpečnost, robustnost a zabezpečení. To probíhá na evropské úrovni, tedy pomoc inovaci, aby se mohly testovat technologie ještě před nasazením v masovějším měřítku, aby byla záruka, že kvalita produktů a služeb je dostatečně vysoká. Za pomoci testování a experimentů které probíhají v těchto zařízeních. Pokud jde o časový rozvrh, tyto projekty jsou ve fázi kontraktace, takže máme časový rozvrh do ledna a toto zařízení pomůže tedy vývojářům dostat se až na trh. Dále máme program Digitální Evropa a platformu. Je to širší iniciativa a v této fázi Digitální Evropy chceme inovátory podporovat, nabídnout platformu, takové tržiště různých nástrojů a zdrojů pro produkty a služby. A toto bude dáno na platformu, aby byl jednotný bod přístupu, tedy možnost dostat se na trh a platforma s věcmi, které zde budou zastoupeny a které splňují náležité požadavky, pokud jde o bezpečnost a tak dále. Tolik v kostce k naší podpoře evropským podnikům v oblasti inovací. Moc krát děkuji za tento pěkný přehled. Je celá řada iniciativ, na kterých Evropská komise pracuje v oblasti umělé inteligence. Určitě můžeme schválit, že Evropská komise bere tuto probíhající revoluci velmi vážně, což je úžasné. A nyní bych se obrátil s podobnou otevřenou otázkou na sama Kennicota, jestli může prosím odpovědět. Možná bych nejprve měl říci, čím se naše centrum pro inovaci zabývá. My sídlíme ve Velké Británii, my nevytváříme politiku, zabýváme se odpovědnou inovací, a to ve veřejném i soukromém sektoru. Já myslím, jak jsme slyšeli, na základě těch východisek, ta důvěra, ta je skutečně klíčovým bodem. Na té opravdu záleží při budování ekosystému. Spadají do toho dvě oblasti. Je to důvěra veřejnosti. Pokud občané nemají důvěru v technologie, pak je nepřijímají. Pokud něco neprobíhá dobře v prostředí, pak je těžké znovu získat důvěru. Na co my se zaměřujeme? Na to, jak inovovat způsobem, který je důvěryhodný z hlediska občanů. Máme 3 klíčové oblasti. Je to, jak umožnit odpovědný přístup k datům. Jsou to data občanů, souvisí to s vývojem nových nástrojů. Je třeba, aby lidé je považovali za vlastní, neměli s nimi problém. Dále technologie ochrany osobních údajů. S tím souvisí. Druhou oblastí je ujištění nebo zajištění umělé inteligence. Assurance. To je program práce, který se zabývá tím, který souvisí s kybernetickou bezpečností. Jak vypadá tento program zajištění? Je to také o budování důvěry v nástroje umělé inteligence. A pokud jde o to ujištění, zajištění, východiskem je, že podniky nevždy přijímají umělou inteligenci, nemají důvěru, že jim to něco přinese, nemají k dispozici to ujištění. A my na tom pracujeme, zabýváme se rolí norem, standardů a samozřejmě hodnocením rizik, hodnocením dopadů, což je důležité při rozšiřování tohoto ujištění či zajištění. Jsme teprve v raném stádiu. Za první rok, co jsme udělali, Mluvili jsme s podniky, zjišťovali jsme, co se vyvíjí, jaké nástroje již používají z umělé inteligence a snažíme se pochopit, kde jsou mezery, jak je zaplnit, jaké přístupy pomohou budovat onu důvěru. A to vše zapadá do širšího britského programu správy, protože chceme takový systém správy, který podporuje tu nejlepší praxi. Je tam regulační prvek. Letos britská vláda vydala politický dokument s přístupem k regulaci umělé inteligenci. Co se tam říká? Podobně jako v dalších státech, my regulujeme umělou inteligenci, pokud o informaci, náš komisař už o tom psal, jsou další regulované oblasti. Snažíme se pochopit, zda jsou v systému nějaké mezery, nějaké nedostatky, které je třeba řešit. A máme další dokument s meziodvětvovými, mezirezortními zásadami, etickými zásadami, odpovědnost, transparentnost. Pro nás je toto velice důležité. Tyto zásady by měly být zohledněny regulátory. Velice vážně je to takový vertikálně strukturovaný systém a samozřejmě kontext je velice důležitý. Rovněž uznáváme, že je třeba více horizontálního přístupu, toho průřezového přístupu. I tyto dimenze je třeba zohlednit. Takže se snažíme pochopit tu regulační infrastrukturu, kterou již máme, jak ji nejlépe využít a pracujeme na tom, abychom zjistili, kde jsou případné nedostatky a o nich můžeme pohovořit později.
Thank you very much. It is always interesting to hear how the UK approaches the problem, given very special position within Europe. So I think we will definitely develop some of the issues that you mentioned. Just one side note. Because you talked about standardization, that it might play an important role, and I think we might be facing a very unique situation in standardization where technical standards that are sort of traditionally created will have to somehow.
Ty se vyvíjejí již tradičně a samozřejmě musí také zahrnovat různé sociální aspekty, sociální předpoklady. Je to zvláštní výzva, ale zároveň i zvláštní příležitost, alespoň v mých očích. A nyní bych rád položil stejnou otázku panu Martinovič-Mejrkovi. Já bych ještě rád poskytl určitý kontext, určité souvislosti. Já jsem zástupcem malých a středně velkých firem. To znamená, že se na věc dívám z jiného úhlu pohledu, z jiného břehu, když to řeknu obrazně. My spolupracujeme se startupy a také s oblastí výzkumu. Zaměřovali jsme se zejména na strojový překlad, dále také na rozpoznávání řeči. Zabýváme se také oblastí zpracování přirozeného jazyka a souvisejícími tématy. Několika let jsme také zkoumali různé vhodné statistické metody a hloubkové učení. Následně jsme se rozhodli založit vlastní společnost a vnímali jsme velkou příležitost zde na evropském trhu, protože pouze 10% firem zde používá umělou inteligenci ve svém biznisu. A proto jsme měli za to, že je to opravdu velký biznis, velká příležitost. A pouze 2% využívají také konverzních metod. A to je důvod, proč jsme vlastně vůbec založili naši firmu. Je pouze náhodou, že ve stejné době byl také vydán regulační zákon k této problematice, k problematice umělé inteligence. a Český svaz průmyslu se k tomuto zákonu zároveň vyjadřoval. Připomínkoval jej. Musím říci, že do určité míry jsme měli obavy, jak rozsáhlá regulace bude. Říkali jsme si, že je lepší komunikovat a spolupracovat a využít této příležitosti. Zdá se, že komentáře byly skutečně také zapracovány v pozdějších zněních tohoto zákona, respektive návrhu zákona. Já bych rád zareagoval na první část otázky, jak dosáhneme vyšší konkurenceschopnosti. My máme pocit, že Evropa je pořád pozadu za Spojenými státy a Čínou, a to v mnoha ohledech. Spojené státy jsou na tom velmi dobře, co se týká kvalitního výzkumu a také publikování.
Qualification in the development rules and standard, while China is quick in data collection and let's say adoption of the technology into their business, right? So we have to catch up in Europe, and we as a startup want to collaborate, we want to give feedback, and we don't only do conversational AI, we do other things in AI, and we are here to give feedback on each particular aspect or each particular subfields of AI, because we think the whole field is very complex and it cannot be solved by a single top-down approach. We need to make the two loose ends communicate and talk to each other. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and I absolutely do agree that it's important to involve all stakeholders into the process of formulating sort of regulatory documents and strategies, and stakeholders have been involved in the process so far, which does not necessarily mean that the result or the current state of the result is ideal from the perspective of all stakeholders, of course. And so let me close the first round with the same question for David.
Oh, thank. Is it working? No. Hello, hello. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Sorry. Maybe I'm behind the speakers, so I don't hear it well from me. David Magard is my name. I work at the Swedish Companies Registration Office, as you see, that Vitek has already spoke about. And I'm co-lead of the Swedish national assignment for furthering AI in the public sector. And I've been working with AI for several years at the ministry level and other areas. Lawyer by training, though. I'm not going to repeat so much. I think all of these positions has been is good, and basically you need legislation, you need financing, you need research to get into actual business and operations. Of course, I'll add two perspectives. One is that you need to kind of be quite digitized to actually be using AI, because if you not have the basic control of your data, if you don't have the people that know how to handle data and structure data, you will end up in some problems. So we have to look at this as a bigger thing than just AI as a technology. It's part of an ecosystem of technologies and how we kind of work with our systems. Of course, this goes into the value. So if I think it's important not just stress AI in all aspects, because AI, and we've seen that in Sweden, old school technology works very well in many aspects as well. So we have to really go dig into the cases and see if we can find some extra value using AI, which we can very much often, but not always. And one other thing here is providing examples, and that's part of our mission. What we're doing now is we see that a lot of people want to use AI, but they're not quite sure how to start and what's the good examples. So we created a database for the public sector, where we showcase examples, good and bad, so you can learn the lessons. And also we want to eventually provide the source code if it's open, which it should be in most cases. We also cooperate with AI Sweden, which is the Swedish National Center private initiative in Sweden, who also holds a database of cases from the business side, private sector side. So in that kind of ecosystem, we can see that we can provide developers and organizations in the senior top level with some examples that are good to kind of frame what you can actually do and what you probably shouldn't do.
All right, thank you very much also for your reflection. And I can see that we have a very active audience. So I've already received a couple of questions through Slido, and so I think it's maybe best time to start answering them, because I definitely think they are relevant, and those are questions that actually very often appear in all debates surrounding this topic. So let me ask this question coming again from the audience. AI is ever evolving, and regulation might go against innovation. Do you see a risk of over-regulation? So, I think we could start with Mrs. Vue.
Yeah, this is definitely a question which is at the core of the development of the AI Act. So this is why this is a risk-based approach. So the goal is not to regulate any application which is low risk, and increasingly, let's say, increase the level of requirement when the level of risk is higher. So in the regulation, there is a list of high-risk use case. And for these high-risk use cases, because they will have an impact, they might have an impact on people's life, then we have to make sure that the users are properly protected. So this is the essence of this risk-based approach. Now, how to make sure that there is the right balance and then it does not stifle innovation. This can also be an advantage. I mean, if a company fulfill the requirements of a high-risk use case for high-risk use case, or the requirement from the regulation, then they will improve the trust and decrease the uncertainty. This was also one of the speakers which said, okay, how can we make sure that the AI system does actually what it is supposed to do? So it might be an advantage of Europe as well to guarantee that the type of AI we want to see in Europe is an AI which is trustworthy and which respects their users. So that's the what we call the AI made in Europe, because they do put the values we have in Europe at the center of these AI systems. So they're a type of AI system we don't want to see in Europe, and those we want to see. Then we want to make sure that there is no harm for their users. So on the one hand, the regulation is there to lower the uncertainty regarding those high-risk use cases, and then to accompany that and to make sure again that there is no stifling of innovation, we will put in place a number of mechanisms to facilitate these fulfillment or guarantee the fulfillment of these requirements with a number of tools. So you've probably have heard already of the regulatory sandboxes and also the funding resources and initiative that we are supporting. I mentioned them before. So this is a way to balance, and this is in the negotiations as well. These are the inputs that are taken into account to make sure that there is a balanced approach to the regulation.
Thank you very much for your answer. Even with the risk-based approach, obviously there is a remaining question of which domains we will understand as a high risk or medium risk and stuff like that. So it's a very it's a very complicated process, of course. But what about other panelists? Would you like to react on the question of potential or danger of overregulation?
Yeah, and I guess that danger is there if you get it wrong. And in the UK, what ministers have been very clear about is they want our approach to regulation and governance of AI to be sort of pro-innovation and pro-growth, which is why we're taking the approach we are around a principles-based approach and working with the sector, the sort of sector regulators who understand their areas and understand the risks and potential harms in the areas that they oversee. And as I said, and then looking at whether there are particular gaps that need to be addressed. I think one thing that's come up in our conversations with industry as well is, as this is an emerging area and AI is developing at pace, sometimes the rules of the game aren't clear, and that in itself can hold back innovation. So what we're hoping to do, or we are doing with our both the sort of the principles-based approach, and as I said earlier, the work we're doing around AI assurance, is to try and get into a space where we do understand a bit more about what does responsible innovation look like, what are the standards and things that that we can set that don't sort of stifle innovation, but sort of set the sort of those rules of the game that people can work towards when they are innovating. And I think one area I was just going to highlight as well, where we have recognised there are specific harms, is in relation to online safety and online harms, where the UK is taking specific action. There's legislation being considered at the moment around specifically addressing harms in that space. But even there, where we are looking to take legislative action, there's actually a really interesting area of in the ways that itself can spark more innovation, because we've got sort of a thriving safety tech sector where the concept of safety tech is growing, and innovation in that space is actually really, really exciting. So I think that's interesting in itself. And then I guess finally, as I said earlier, we see a sort of assurance approach is really important. And again, if you take cybersecurity, again, as the focus on cybersecurity has grown, that in itself has become a growth sector, where there's been lots of innovation as well. And we see that similarly in sort of AI assurance, we see as a potential area for growth in its own right as well. And in addition to sort of just developing the tools, we think there's an exciting area for development there that's sort of only in very, very early stages.
Thank you very much. Martin, would you like to add your perspective?
So I think that as a responsible business owner, I have to answer that I am afraid of over-regulation. However, I wanted to say I have experience from both sides, from a big corporation, from the times when GDPR was introduced, right? So I have witnessed how the whole process of research got more complicated regarding, let's say, training on customer data, improving and measuring, let's say, even biases on customer data, because the regulations, let's say, forbid to some people, access the data. So, big corporations really play everything by the book, and so we had strict measures who can access what data, and it really had some impact on the process. Everything took longer and everything got more complicated. At the same time, I'm as let's say a stakeholder in this conversational AI, I must admit that even ourselves, we wanted to have some, let's say, tendency to auto-regulate the business, right? For example, when we started to sell our products to customers, we witnessed that they had previous bad experience, for example, with conversational AI. So we came up with this idea to do something like guild or like corporations in the medieval sense of companies doing similar trade that would certify their products like this is a good quality product for given field. Something that would add some label of trust to your product, and your customers would accept it. So I think it's also about like auto-regulation and education of your customers. So yes, I'm worried about over-regulation. And I think that we have to collaborate together to do that reasonably.
Thank you very much. And it's always very nice to hear a sober approach also coming from the professional community. And after all, regulation is also about creating a level playing field as well. So that's an important aspect that I think should be also mentioned. David, would you like to add something to this?
Kind of mirroring what Martin said. Regulation is difficult, especially on the technology. My kind of epiphany here was that when I gone through a lot of reports and also spoke with stakeholders from the business side, if something goes wrong and we don't have a regulation on AI, and you kind of know the public perception on AI, that's going to damage the whole area for many years. So overregulation, of course, we shouldn't have overregulation, but I think it's sensible to have some regulations on it.
All right, thank you very much for your answer as well. And I can see further questions coming from Slido. So let me just confirm that this seems to be safe and secure artificial intelligence that really works, and that I'm able to reproduce actually your questions. So we are on a very safe side here. And I have another question coming from the audience that I think will be very much for Cécile. So can you name any specific facilitators or testing environments for the developers? Will there be opportunity to test the AI products in the regulatory sandbox? I mean, from the Commission perspective, and then there might be some specific examples, obviously, on national levels.
Right. So for the moment, I mentioned one current set of tools that we are developing and that will be launched next January. These are the testing and experimentation facilities. So since the calls about testing experimentation facilities were launched some time ago and prepared with the member states several years ago, so they will not, have from day one a full-fledged regulatory sandboxes, but we ask them to offer a testing environment for any innovators to test in real or close to real environment their innovations. So and to test the different aspects. So to test on the one hand the technical aspect, but also whenever possible, and also following the development of the AI Act, develop regulatory sandboxes when possible. So we will see that evolving during the lifetime of these testing and experimentation facilities to see how they will be gradually integrated in the running project. So just to be a bit more specific, so the platforms that will be launched, these projects that will be launched and testing experimentation facilities. So there will be 4 sectors in the 4 projects that we are launching. So healthcare, manufacturing, agro-food, and smart cities and communities. So this provides already quite a large set of environment or range of sectors in which innovators can test the technology, but also what is linked to the regulatory framework, and gradually, as long as the AI Act will be developed, then take on board what needs to be tested in terms of if they address the high risk AI application, and in the longer term vision and development of these testing and experimentation facility, we will have to see how, even to reinforce the future TEFs there might be future call on TEF in the following years, in the following part of the work program on Digital Europe, and then to see what needs to be done to offer further testing facilities for European innovators to help them, fulfilling the requirements, and see what needs to be done to also fill gaps. So where are the needs which are not already fulfilled by other activities? And there is another type of activities which are led by another unit in the Commission. These are the European Digital Innovation Hubs. So these are local ecosystem. Their goal is to help their local economies to be successful in their digital transformation. So they will offer digital services and help the companies in their environment, in their regions, to uptake digital technologies. And AI is one of the important technologies that they will help, they will facilitate the adoption of. And in that context, they, as stated in the current version of the regulatory framework, which is under development, they might as well offer the regulatory sandbox in which then the innovators will be able then to test in these framework. Then you mentioned as well national initiatives. So Spain is really proactive in that context, and they are developing regulatory sandboxes in AI. And then we will follow up closely with them and see how to build on what is done at national level, and see how to build on that and serve the whole European innovator market.
Thank you very much. Would you like to add something? Because I guess it's very commission level type of thing. But I can only confirm. I'm not a representative of the Czech government. I'm a researcher, but I know that the Czech government intends to invest quite a lot into several sandboxes, and one of them should be regulatory sandbox as well. Obviously, we need a full-fledged regulation first, and then we might think about a sandbox. But there should be some initiatives helping, particularly SMEs, to deal with the regulatory frameworks. And I know there are many other initiatives across Europe that Cecil already mentioned. I see Sam that he wanted to add something.
Yeah, I guess linked to it, but slightly differently, is where we're doing a lot of work as well isn't just around the sandbox sort of approach, which I think is really interesting, and regulators in the UK have taken similar approaches, but also this idea of what does responsible innovation look like, and what support can we provide to that, that's around thinking of development and deployment of technologies as a whole life cycle, right from developing, testing, deploying, and then evaluating. And an area that we've done quite a lot of work in is partnering with different organizations or different sectors to think about how we can support them directly, and then share insights and share those with other sectors. So we've recently worked with the recruitment industry to think about where employers are looking at using AI tools to help recruit staff, which has been a very controversial area. Working with the sector to think about what can we sort of co-design with them in terms of producing guidance that helps organizations think through what are the issues they need to be looking at, how can they address them. So to try and sort of, not regulation at all, but actually just trying to identify what could good practice be in different areas, and then how can we apply that to other sectors once we've tested it in one area. How can we try it elsewhere? So we've done some work in, as I said, the recruitment industry. We've also done some work with local government in the UK looking at how predictive analytics is used in children's social care. So again, a really controversial, difficult area where we think we can sort of directly support organizations and then sort of share that practice across different sectors.
All right, thank you very much. And I received another question for David here. If you could tell us, how do you create data sets? Are the data synthetic? And do you provide any testing environment for developers with synthetic data? It perhaps reflects on what you said.
From the public sector, what we're doing now is we kind of investigating how we can do that in a good environment. And now we're looking at a kind of tenant system where we isolate physically and legally data, so that all the organizations can bring the data to a kind of set environment, and hopefully on the long run we could also synthesize that data and use federated learning to kind of aggregate what the data we have in public sector, because we're not in the position that where we want to just open up everything so the data flows completely freely in the public sector, because isolation is there for good purposes, so we don't get a kind of surveillance state. On the private side, there are several initiatives. I'm not that too deep into them, so I will just pass on that.
All right, thank you very much. And I would have a question for Martin, because we have a representative of an SME here, and it's been often argued that one of the potential way forward might be to build robust public-private partnerships, for example. So, and maybe even in this, or from this specific regulator perspective, do you see any particular space for these public-private partnerships, and do you see it as a potential way forward in this area, or also in other areas of your performance?
Okay, so maybe, so public-private partnerships. Yeah, well, so when we started to, read into this AI regulation business, I will start with the sentiment, right? How to improve the sentiment. So we were worried that the draft could somehow provoke some negative reaction from the public or potential customers against AI, because in the very first reading, we read it as if AI is pictured as something evil that people should be protected from. Then, fortunately, let's say our perception of that sentiment started to improve. So yeah, we do believe in public-private partnerships. I don't know what was meant, whether, let's say, the controlled environment such as sandboxes, or let's say some efforts towards standardizations. So maybe I can touch both. So regarding the standardization, I think we take as our responsibility that we will push it bottom up, that we are ready to collaborate and to give feedback and let's say describe our field of expertise, areas that we really do understand. I think that the regulatory, let's say the standardization track could have the similar let's say similar history or similar development as in let's say civil engineering. There are different components, like in AI we build from components, right? We do not, 5 years we did train neural networks from scratch. Now it's not feasible. It costs, I don't know, $12 million to train some GPT model, because the electricity is very expensive. So we build from components. We start with some general model, then we collect some, let's say, domain-specific data, and then we customize it for, let's say, customer use case or some solution that we offer to the customer. And we think that that there should be some standardization process. Let's say the producers of those general models should describe what are the potential risks with that model, what is the potential bias, or what is the exhibited bias of that model given the training data that was trained on. That's something that the original provider of that general model must know, because we are downstream, we very often do not have access to the original data that it was trained on, right? So each particular component, similar as in civil engineering, should be described, and it should, let's say, fulfill certain parameters. It would fulfill some norms, so that if you build from it, you are safe, that you will not violate any let's say, safety or privacy, let's say, safety requirement, right? So that's like one thing. And the other thing regarding public the topic regarding the sandboxes. I'm still returning to it because I probably wanted to ask Cecile the question, what is the timeline, right? Maybe I had two questions here. Like, what is the timeline when those sandboxes will be available to us developers, when the API will be exposed so that we can start playing with it? And the second part is there a collaboration with, let's say, universities so that, for example, postdocs will be aware or will be fluent in working in the environment of those sandboxes? I mean, so far we are very interested in the idea. We know that we feel it's a good idea, but we don't know how to access that. And will it constitute any burden for us, any obstacle?
All right, thank you. And Martin has taken my role as a moderator. No, it's actually great. So, Cecile, could you please answer his question, and I'll try to add the university perspective later on.
Just to clarify, these are the first steps towards developing these regulatory sandboxes. So Spain announced this initiative in June, and they're pushing for it. And then the testing experimentation facilities, they will need some time to also launch their services, and the regulatory sandboxes then when they decide to implement some, then they will come later. So I expect that it will still take some time. So hopefully still in 2023 there could be some start. And then regarding the some starting initiative, maybe Spain will already have some pilot before end, because they really want to test and then to progress, not to wait until the last moment and then discover start the initiative after everything is ready, both from the standards and from the full adoption of the AI Act. So at the beginning would probably be more piloting phase, and then gradually go to the full scale operation. Now. So that was about the timing. Now, regarding the access. So I can comment on what we're going to do in the TEF. So the testing experimentation facilities, their main users, beneficiary, let's say, should be companies. So those innovators that have developed some technology already, they have tested it in the labs. And then they need to really test it in real environment at scale before being to deploy. So the customers are not mainly researchers, but these are developers. It could possibly be also some RTO, so some of these bodies dealing with tech transfer, because then they are also on the path of bringing the technology to the market. Now, when it comes to researchers, it's important to make them aware of what, I mean, even if you develop basic technologies, then you have to understand what they could be used for. So even though the AI Act does not cover research per se, so you can still do research freely, but still I think it's a good thing that the developer of AI have an understanding about the potential risk that the technology they develop could create, as you rightly put, like GPT. So if it's a complete black box, you don't know with what they have been trained, you don't know which kind of potential bias could be in the system. So then they cannot be used later on because there is too much unknown about them. So I think it's very important to bring awareness to all the developers, even from basic research, and I see that coming more and more into, for instance, we are funding these networks of excellence centers, and this awareness about risk, about human-centric AI, and this is part of also the Horizon Europe program, where we push really for human-centric AI, and there are even ethical requirements each time you develop a new any kind of AI approach that you develop. So I think it's important to help the researchers as well and make them aware of the requirement, and then we also encourage them, of course, to be involved in the standardization initiative, and even some of our support action also help to bring the community from research to developer to user into to contribute to the standardization initiatives, and to share as well good practices and so on.
Yes, thank you very much. And I can't speak for obviously the entire tertiary sector, but the Czech situation that I'm more or less aware of is that we are obviously trying to build the AI Center of Excellence and add sandboxes, to this kind of environment. So it's actually meant as the entire ecosystem. It's not treated separately. And in this perspective, I think the strategy is extremely smart and might be in the end functioning. So I think these initiatives definitely should involve universities. I mean, it's extremely important for the universities not to lose connections to the real world, which is very often happening. But so this might be one of the ways forward. And and you mentioned that it's an ideal opportunity, for example, for PhD or postgraduate students, definitely to to link their theoretical education with the real practice, where they might later continue. So this is certainly the idea. And with the regulatory sandbox, I think it's kind of straightforward that the legal experts will be involved in that, and with other types of sandboxes it will kind of depend, but to link universities, so the company through sandboxes, is actually a great idea, and obviously the funding should go to the companies, but for the universities this can be extremely helpful, to have it as a connection to the companies, to the business, and to the real world. Sorry, and I can see another question here, which is slightly different, maybe a little bit more academic, but still, how are you thinking about transparency in the context of making AI safe and secure? So obviously one of the core problems and a key question. So who would like to start? Yeah, David. Yeah.
So we started a project in 2019 regarding transparency and trust, basically for using AI. The outcome is similar to the AI Act, I have to say. So, but some key elements of this is when we spoke to the researchers and research community. Every country has a bit of a different kind of angle on this, and how you actually are transparent, and if transparency helps with trust, because it's not clear in all ways actually. For Sweden, basically we're a high trust society. People tend to trust public authorities and companies and each other. What we saw is that people are not that interested in reading about the AI from like a kind of manual. This AI is set up in this way, and it works in this way, and you can use it for those purposes. For some people, of course, that would be interesting, but for most people, they don't have the level of expertise to understand it anyway, and they just say that, okay, this is an AI, and disregard all the other information that's there. So what's more effective actually for us is that we can show that the ones who are using the AI system have done this kind of trust model self-assessment, and that the supervisory authorities can access that and use that to see what's happening, because they have the expertise to actually dig into the details. So if something goes wrong, the ordinary citizen can go to the supervisory authority to go to the ones who actually made the system. And this is a transparency issue, of course, as well, but you need to kind of find it in the ecosystem of trust and how you kind of develop that. The most of the transparency comes with what we now developing. We're trying to follow the AI Act here as well, so we don't do anything out of scope. But some kind of mark when AI is being used, and AI is being used on you or towards what you needs. So people know that there's an AI there. We probably have to do that anyway. But what they actually go for next is not a complete set of instructions on how the AI was used. It just summarizes that, and then if you find this is something wrong here, or if you think somewhere, go to the supervisory authority. And for us, that seems to be kind of the way to go. I understand that in some other countries, this is not the way, though. So you have to look on a national level.
Right, thank you. Martin or Sam, would you like to?
Yeah, I think transparency is one of the really interesting elements of all of this. And in all the work we've done where we've in sort of run focus groups or done polling with people, transparency is always one of the things that people say they want. But I think, as David said, it's not always clear what that actually means. And really importantly is, just being transparent doesn't mean people will trust something, because if you show some things and they don't like it, that it's not going to build trust. But I do think transparency is an important element of a trustworthy system, and we need to think about it through that way is important. I also think that, as I guess again linked to what David said, is that transparency in different sectors and different contexts can mean different things. And I think, again, the way we're trying to approach this through the sort of principles-based route of sort of thinking about sector and context-specific approaches, then transparency can look differently in different sectors and different uses. I also think here there is a role for the public sector to sort of potentially lead the way as well. And last year we published a public sector algorithmic transparency standard, which we're piloting at the moment across the public sector in the UK, which is aimed at it's more of a reporting standard to drive consistency in the way public bodies that are using algorithms to make decisions can be transparent about what algorithms they're using, where the data comes from, and provide information in a consistent way. And we developed this standard it's sort of through engagement with citizens, and lots of people actually said, they probably won't ever look at this, but it was reassuring to know that someone can, whether that's journalists or academics or NGOs, to sort of scrutinize the use of algorithms a bit more. So we're piloting that at the moment. It's being adopted by a number of public bodies, including local authorities, national government departments, and also working with some police forces on it as well. So, and the plan is to sort of continue iterating it and improving it. But we've also had interest from industry who think that they might be able to adopt and deploy it for some of the tools that, for some of the uses of algorithmic decision-making systems they're using as well. So I think there's an interesting role there for how the public sector can sort of lead the way, and industry can engage with that as well.
Thank you very much. Martin, would you like to add
Or maybe
something?
I will just shortly comment. So basically, transparency is something that basically gives you trust of your customers, right? So without that trust, you cannot sell anything. So just a practical comment. We do, for example, some educational, let's say, courses called AI Academy, where we basically explain to our clients like what we do with the data, and also what are the basics of our algorithm. So we are very open about the data processing and algorithms that we are using, and actually use it as a form to communicate and engage with customers. So definitely I support that. That's something that we definitely agree on.
Thank you. And
Maybe
now
I
let-
would.
Yes,
I would
yes, I
add
was just going to
a
give
little
floor.
bit
Yes.
just to build
So-
on, and I would actually build on the last comment. I think one, it's valid for transparency, but I think about all what we do, and I really like the example also of Sweden. I think it's very important to really communicate and raise awareness, because the AI is used in so many systems already, but do we really communicate? Do we really inform the public about what are the potential of this technology? How can they already concretely support the society, support the citizens, support the companies? So can we have success stories that we can explain and in a transparent manner, but also explain the limitations? Because you also have these fears that those systems are so smart that they're going to, destroy the world and things like that. So I think we should really also communicate about the limitations of those systems. They can do that, but not more. Or in this context, this is what they're up to. So I think in Europe we could improve on that way to raise awareness and not let also these fears and sci-fi catastrophic view.
Thank you very much, and this is very interesting to hear, because I absolutely agree that the communication element might be crucial, and that's the very practical understanding of transparency. And it's actually a very good idea to translate these potentially complicated terms into these kind of practical notions, because for me, the first thing that comes to my mind, but this is very academic or research oriented, is that we need to understand that with machine learning we are operating in a life cycle, and we very often tend to focus just on one element, like training or potentially testing, but there is also this deployment side. And so if we properly want to address issues like transparency, for example, or other, typical AI sort of notions, the life cycle element is very important. And connecting it to what you said about communication, I think it's very much about the deployment element, because people are not interested in the ways how the data, how the models were trained, or what kind of data were used for that, because it's very abstract anyway, even for people who perhaps understand the process. So to focus on the deployment side of things, that might be useful. Yes, David, you wanted to
I just
react.
want to add shortly on that. Also, the follow-up is very important here. We see that as well, because you train your model, you do your kind of assessment, and then it's out there and used. But you have to follow up on that, and also kind of provide information that you have been following up, because people start to understand now that AI is continuously evolutionary, so it changes and change with when you train it with new data. So you have to kind of have a structure for that as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great point, and maybe the general social situation is getting better, because I still remember, again, more from a research perspective, that in 6 years ago, there were many fancy ideas about super intelligence and machines controlling the societies and all these kind of things, the human interpretation of AI and stuff like that, and it's slowly disappearing from the public discourse, if I may say, which is a good news, I think. And we have a very practical, we face very practical problems now, how to just explain that it's a ordinary technology that's going to be deployed, and that might have some risk associated with it, but obviously brings a lot of benefits, rather than building these terrific images or horrible images rather. So thank you very much for these answers, and we are slowly approaching the end of the panel. I can't see any new question on Slido, but I have one, I guess, final question for all our panelists, even if they come from different backgrounds, and that is how can policymakers build trust in AI solutions without burdening AI innovative ecosystem? So is there any message you would like to leave for the policymakers or even politicians? Cecile, would you like to start?
Yeah. For me, it's really essential to have an approach where everyone has the opportunity to raise their views. So the researcher, they have the knowledge about the technology, so they know what are the potential, what are the limitations. But it's also important to have take into account the viewpoint of the innovators. So what are the constraints from the company? So what was said regarding not to overregulate or to provide accompanying tool to support them in the innovation, and then also the end users. So which can be companies, which can be public sector, which can be also eventually citizens. So making sure that we take into account their viewpoint. And I think in the new wave, I would say, of the way of working, we have this multi-stakeholder approach where everyone has the chance to raise their voice. And it is important to make sure that we develop a technology which is what everyone wants, and then which also help the European innovators to be successful. And coming back to the development of the technology, there again, it's becoming, and it's more and more important to be really multidisciplinary. As you say, it's not only a technology push, which was the old school approach, but we really want to bring all the different disciplines to come together and have also the social science and humanities involved in the design and in the development of those technology, and exchange also their knowledge and experience with the developer to make sure that the technology that we develop and we deploy is really what we want and which respect our values.
Thank you very much. And I'm now turning to our remaining three panelists. So shall we start with the company's perspective?
Well, I'm not sure that I will be. I will be quick, because I think it's mainly my responsibility to build trust, right? Because if I don't build trust, I don't sell anything. So I'm grateful for any help that policymakers are willing to give me. I'm welcoming these conversations. I'm willing to collaborate in the future. But I think that the primary it's a primary goal for the industry to build trust, right? So we have to make AI applications that work as best as we can, and that are reliable. And we really have to be open and transparent so that people believe us. And we believe in AI that basically empowers and augments human real intelligence. We do not want to replace anything.
Yes. So you mean that the policymakers shouldn't ruin your efforts, right? Or no?
I hope so.
That's what you didn't say. It was just a little joke, of course. And now, David, would you like to reflect on that?
I mean, what we should do is pretty much support Martin, I guess, providing some legal certainty, providing a certification if that needed, standardization measures, and kind of involving, as Cecile said, all the stakeholders in discussions, because that's how we kind of get go ahead.
Yeah, I think in this space, sort of the citizen voice is really important, and what we can do to understand citizens' expectations and concerns, and then how we address them. And in some polling we did recently, I think over half of people said that they were unsure about how data collected about them is used and shared, and that sort of suggests we are in this sort of quite a low trust environment. So I think working to address that I think is really important. And then also thinking, particularly in the public sector, how we use data and how we use AI to improve people's lives. I think often, in the public sector, tools and data is often sort of used against people, or people don't see a tangible benefit to their lives. So thinking about ways we can deploy technology and use data that people feel is making their lives better, I think it helps address some of the trust issues as well.
Thank you very much. And it actually brings us to the end of our session. I think we had a very interesting and inspiring discussion. I'd like to thank the audience for your attention and for some brilliant questions, but mostly I really would like to thank our great panelists, Cecile Huillet from DG Connect. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Sam Kennicott, Martin Čmejrek, and David Magord. So thank you very much. And I have one technical message for you, that the conference continues downstairs with some final remarks coming from the Vice Minister of Industry and Trade and the summit summaries. So please do not leave and stay with us downstairs in the main hall. So thank you very much once more for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.